what I said. He could do anything. Yeah, but what does that mean? He could do anything.
You don't understand. He can create you. He could recreate your whole life. He could recreate me, you know, sometimes.
I've heard he eats a whole Papa John's pizza every video. Every video.
Manufactures universes. So
Yeah, I think he's cool. He's kinda cute.
Yeah, I've met him. He's 8 feet tall. No nose.
Yeah, would I date him? Yes. Are we... Oh my gosh, I thought we were talking about Steven Seagal. I'm so sorry, I thought we were talking about Steven Seagal. Who is it, Manicotti?
Yeah, so one time he did a video where he was comparing different... He ranked the Free League games with different lunch meats. And I'm not saying he compared them. He would like number 4, Tales from the Loop, number 3, prosciutto, number 2, Coriola, that might have been a meat, Corioli. Yeah, good guy.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Man Alone Solo Role-Playing YouTube channel. I can't tell if I'm getting better or worse at video editing, but at least that was a short intro comparatively, right? 10, 20 seconds. Welcome to an episode that, I gotta be honest, I'm thrilled that you're here, because before you is something that completely took me by surprise. It was as the Gen Zers would say, was not on my bingo card for this year. And of course I am talking about, and let's do our best here, I'm not very good at uvular glottal fricatives in French, but we would say perhaps Écryme. Or, if you're from the Midwest, you could say Écryme. Or you could just say that French game, because it is a popular French tabletop role-playing game. It was a rare situation in which it was like a love at first sight pickup. I mean, I think the game is absolutely beautiful. The cover of it is gorgeous. It is one of the most interesting, not only world building, but also the mechanics of the game. Super interesting. It is also one of the weirdest games ever. I mean, it is like... This is like weapons grade level Man Alone content right here. Okay, this game is based on, it's pretty much a combination of an investigation of, let's say, like 18th century mesmerism and vitalism, Baudelarian spleen, splenic idealism, alchemy, transformation, Aristotelian ethics, class struggle, economic power, social collapse, decadence, melancholic modernity. It's incredible. I'm so glad that I picked this game up. And at the same time, for probably the first 3 hours with it, I was like, what the hell is going on here? I wanted to get an idea of what the game was about, so I picked up the conductor's manual, the GM manual, that was cheaper than the player's guide, which is, I would say, somewhat rare, right? Usually the GM guide has a bit more to it. And this game in 2023, they announced that they were creating an English version of it. They kickstarted it, and then it was kind of quiet until recently. Both of these came out. There's also a GM screen and some dice that if any of voo's who made this are watching this, I love. dice. Anyway, so I pick this up. I bring it home. I say, look, if this is any good, I'll pick up the player's manual. I was back at the FLGS the next day, but at the same time, I didn't really learn how to play the game, the game from the conductor's manual, because the conductor's manual is like mostly best practice for GMing. And so it has background, how to explain what's going on, how to conduct the game. Talked about all of like the different world building, talked about how you're supposed to introduce things. It is extremely thorough, granular. Like what sort of music would be good for this, right? And it even has film soundtracks. Dolores Claiborne by Danny Elfman. Maybe James Newton Howard's music for the films of M. Night Shyamalan. Or, of course, Philip Glass. Minimalist arrangements in Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. And by the end of reading this, I was like, I have to have more of this. This is simultaneously the least rules or mechanics focused GM guide I've ever seen, but at the same time has more helpful tables and stuff in it than I think anything I've ever seen. And I need to back up here because I want to talk about this game in the right way. Again, I'm calling it the Philosopher's Stone because alchemically, that was never found. And I don't know if this perfect thing exists. But looking through this conductor's manual, there were certain things in here that I was like, the writers of this have gotten really close because they have they've zoomed in on certain things that are so they're so evocative, they're so widely applicable. So yeah, we have like character tables. We have a fruit fly. Are you kidding me? Hold on. I'm not getting bananas anymore. One day? I can't have them for more than one day and I get a fruit fly? Anyways, we have character tables, place tables, object tables. Very good. Interaction tables, behavior tables. Getting the game going. Plot twist tables. Subplots. Strange elements. Okay. Very good. And by the way, the art in this, we'll get to like what the world is, but the art in this is also amazing. All right, I've got to stick to the plan because now I want to tell you about the world. Let's take a step back. I don't want to be sort of, I don't want to overdo it, but there is a poem by Baudelaire, who this poem, when I read it, despite myself, I'm not going to say I weep, but it does hit somewhere in me that is a very tender spot. And I'm going to read. It's not that long. I'll read one stanza of it in French, and then I'll read the rest. I'll reread that and then read it in English. I have to put in my time humiliating myself with some French here. So we'd say, souvent, poussamos les hommes d'équipage prenant des albatros vastes oiseaux des mers, qui souvent indolents compagnons des voyages, la navire glissant sur les gouffres amers. Okay. Started off good. All right. Often, this is called the albatross. So, okay. Often, to amuse themselves, the men of the crew catch albatrosses, vast birds of the sea, who follow, languid companions of the voyage, the ship gliding on the bitter gulfs. Hardly have they placed them on the deck than these kings of the sky, clumsy and ashamed, pitifully let their great white wings drag beside them like oars. This winged traveler, how awkward and weak he is. He, so beautiful before, how comical and ugly he looks. One man teases his beak with a pipe. Another limps, mocking the cripple that could fly. The poet resembles the prince of the clouds, who haunts the storm and laughs at the archer. Exiled on the ground amidst jeers, his giant wings prevent him from walking. So, this is Baudelaire, and Baudelaire was the context that he wrote in is between these two places of spleen and ideal. Okay. And this poem is a perfect encapsulation of this contrast or conflict, because the ideal is you have the albatross is this bird when they're up in the sky, majestic, master of storms, soaring through the sky, this massive wing spread. And then on the deck, it's clumsy, it's humiliated, it's mocked, right? And then he says that's what the poet is like. The poet is like this thing that should be the prince of the clouds, haunting the storm, laughing at the archers, but it has to sit here on the ground, being jeered at. And the poet is torn between grandeur and degradation, between this ideal and this despair, which was very much the sign of the times that Baudelaire lived. And why do you care? Well, because in Écryme, the spleen and ideal are two of the things that you have to figure out for your character at the start of play. You have to figure out what they want in the world, but then also the thing that pains them and anchors them. Like you have to figure out your character's utopian ideal, but also the thing that is less so, right? This is you. You are a being torn between grandeur and degradation, ideal and despair. And this is, I wanted to say this first, even if it's a bit vague right now, because this is actually what makes this game so amazing, is that they've chosen this dyadic to explore, okay? And by figuring these things out, it asks you to be a character or play a character who is in conflict with themselves. And because of this conflict, I believe that this game has identified what is often missing from other games, especially games from the US. And it is that your character should have an ideal. And we're good at this, but we're not good at understanding this. And the reality is that most people have a utopian vision of the world, but only certain people are able to overcome the splenic aspect of themselves to the point that they, this Baudelarian melancholy, this sort of woundedness, they can't overcome it because we are of the world. And so when you don't have these in conflict with one another, you have absurdist characters. And I know I don't mean to personally attack anybody here. If you take it that way, you take it that way. But this is why so many like YouTube laugh a minute actual play groups, their characters are not rooted, they're not grounded in anything. They're absurd because they are only this, good or bad. And the idea that the world is filled with like maniacal villains and saintly, heroic, perfect specimens of humans, it's just not the way that it is. Okay, we are we are beautiful and horrible. We are the albatross in the sky and the one waddling on the deck. And this is not just an offhand thing in this game either, to be like, yeah, figure out whatever your ideal and then the other thing. The process that you are led through in character creation, let me show you this. Actually, on the way to do that, I promise I won't get too far off, but I just want to show you this. This is like, I think this will put in focus like how amazing, brilliant, and psycho the authors of this book are. Ready? You want to make some NPCs? Cool. Here's some mannerisms and descriptive elements. That's pretty helpful, right? Oh, even more. Origins, physical descriptions, eyes, hair, face, voice. Psychological, wow, qualities. Romantic, serious, modest. Faults, that's helpful. Okay, very. Whoa, we have names? Names for all of these city states in this game. It's divided in these city states, and it's sort of, I don't know if this is a word yet, but uchronic, like alternate past. So you have things like Vienna and Prague, and then Canterbury, Gloriana. Look at these names. Look at this. How do you do this? How do you do this? Then let's take a break from that. Naming a city, you get all of these adjectives, common nouns, characteristic elements of a child, a Konzern. We'll talk about all these. Ministry, atmosphere, scenario, linking people in groups together. How do these two know each other? Roll 2d6, 1 and 1. Okay, adultery and ambition. Okay, that's how they know each other. We have to create our airship, and we have to also learn about traverser lunatism, because when you cross these long traverses between city-states to avoid the Écryme, which is this massive pool of corrosive filth that pretty much covers the entire Earth, you got to get there one way or another. So if it's not an airship, it's a bridge, and if it's not that, it is stilts. So this is the adventure, or you could fly. But there's a video of a guy who tried this at the Eiffel Tower, like for real, it didn't go well. All right, spleen and ideal. The character must then be fleshed out through the choice of a spleen and an ideal. This emotional side of the character differentiates them from others, but must also remain reasonable and believable. Even if it is difficult to achieve, their ultimate ideal should not just be a utopia. No sane person can truly hope to save the world and remake it according to their own ideas. The ideal is more like a blueprint that acts as a reference point, an ambition, a personal code of conduct, or a sense of direction that guides the character. It isn't just there to make the character feel passionately about something. Similarly, the spleen is not there to make the character into an inflexible fanatic or a depressed defeatist. All right? So you will set up the spleen and ideal, and it gives these examples right here. You are an arpent monk who dreams of educating the illiterate population of the traverses, but is distressed when he sees the poverty they suffer from. A Venetian artist aspires to create the perfect work of art. They despair at not having yet done so. The name of this, Écryme, is not a word. As far as I could tell, it is not a French word. So what I can figure out, just knowing linguistically about French, is that putting this E with an accent, what is that called again? My French teacher, poor woman, she tried so hard. Esongu, something like that, this means like really like strong emphasis of something, okay? And then crime is crime. And because this big sea of poison is called this, I have to think that it's it can also mean like sin, transgression. And so I would think symbolically, we don't really know up front what caused it, but it should give us a clue that this sea is sort of like the sins are drowning, burning, rotting the world. I don't know. That's just my guess. You could see under the word here is this bridge, and that is how the planet looks now. All right, there's this beautiful, beautiful picture coming up here. Yes. So all of the art is incredible. So you have these city states, okay, and they're separated by milk chocolatey Ovaltine, Yoo-hoo. And if you could see down by this pillar here, there are some people walking. I just love people walking. These people are stilt walkers. And one of the things that's cool about this, again, this world that is created here is that because there are so few cities left in the world, like the ones that survived had to literally build themselves up on like these metal seasteading platforms. There is these traverses that connect them, but there's different like models of them. So some of them are very old and crumbling and completely broken, and some of them are newer and more trustworthy, but they're maybe monitored more. So like if you're carrying something across, maybe they want to see what's in whatever the vehicle. And so you have a package that you want to bring across. Well, how about give it to a stilt walker, or you can give it to somebody who will fly it over. And so, yeah, this is fantastic. You could sort of see this again. This is right here, the splenic and the ideal. Okay, like we're having this beautiful, like if we just look at this here, this could be a Seurat painting, but now we look at the reality of this just completely destroyed, polluted environment. So this is a stone traverse, steel traverse, and they call them wefts, which is amazing. The first time I ever saw the word weft was for my game Outer Darkness with the wound weft was this like quilt. So I never seen that word before. Sometimes you want to come up with like a interesting word for something. In this game, it is like the stages of them building these traverses. So, and I guess they exist on different levels. It's actually, I think, does happen in New York. Is like on the lower level, the first weft. There were no trains on it or anything, but now in the third weft, you can get across it. There's transportation. There is a lot of political dynamics that go into the linkages between these city-states because they're separated so much that they almost formed like their own cultures, their own norms, okay? All right, I'm paranoid that I did not give like enough of an overview of the game to at least understand what I'm talking about. So really quickly, I wrote some bullet points here that I'm going to read. Écryme is a dystopian, steampunk, post-apocalyptic, urban fantasy RPG, originally in French, and now it got an English edition. In it, the world is covered by a corrosive, acidic substance called the Écryme, which destroys most things. Humanity survives on outcrops and in cities built of steel and stone with massive traverses, bridges, networks connecting them above the dangerous sea of Écryme beneath. Because of the setting, resources are scarce, survival is hazardous, and exploration of the traverses, the in-between, the bridges, the dangerous zones, is a major activity and subject of play, as is the relationship between the different city-states and their different cultures. It is a 2d6 system. I think that's what it is in the French version. I can't tell. There's literally not much about English version and the French version. I'm only able to line by line translate that so much. But this has survival, resource pressure, supernatural, occult elements, emotions, secrets, and it's all in this urban context. And Baudelaire was one of the first writers to really like start taking this street level view of Paris and invented the flaneur, which is the sort of, how can I describe a flaneur? Like a guy who's walking around Paris and sees everything, very perceptive, but not involved, not invested in anything, like a people watcher who has their eye on everything and is just normal and nondescript enough so that people don't see them as intrusive or spying on them. And it's this idea of like being able to see something in its raw form. If you're familiar with the paintings of Toulouse-Lautrec, it's like who used to do those beautiful paintings of the Parisian nightlife. And Toulouse-Lautrec was this tiny guy, and he would just sit in the back and paint people dancing and drinking. And these paintings have so much joy. But on the other end of that is Toulouse-Lautrec, who is literally like a man who had a lot of physical issues, right, in terms of how he walked and his size. I'm not sure if there's a specific thing that he had, but was considered at the time quite homely, quite ugly. And this again is that tension between the splenic and the ideal. And Baudelaire was obsessed with this. Like, so much of his writing and poetry was about this conflict, this difference. And it is reflected in extremely thematic ways, but also extremely literal ways. And if we ever do get to the character sheet, you will see that the cephaly, which is the magic system, is this balancing of these different components of humanity, like different aspects of the self. This, I believe, is the sort of philosopher's stone of oracle. This is not an oracle. This is a tracking system, but I'm saying, like, if there was a philosopher's stone of an oracle, I think it would involve these elements. And I've actually mapped these out alchemically, and we can talk about all of that as well. But I will tell you, in the middle, entelechy is an Aristotelian concept. Aristotle wrote about entelechy as like the thingness. I would say it's the entelechy is like okay, it's Maslow, self-actualization, right? Like, entelechy is realizing one's potential, or the inner drive that makes a thing want to become its full self. It's the core of that person. In the same way, a person who is attuned to the sort of magic powers is a cephalic, and it's the core of them as well. And then around it, we have mechany, which is like the mechanical, material, technological aspect. We have elegy, which is the poetic, mournful, artistic. We have scoria, which would be like residue, decay, or literally what's left after you smelt metal. And so it's like that which is burned off and useless. And then psyche, the mind, the soul, the inner life. So there is also this fractalization that shows some more direct relationships between some of them, but that all of them are interrelated as well. So it's very much like an elemental wheel, a sphere of influence. But it's done in this late Romance period metaphysical vocabulary. And what is interesting, what I think you will be mesmerized about, is that there was this whole era of understanding the world that was mostly fake science, and it is gone now, but many parts of it live on in hypnotism and psychotherapy. And that was mesmerism, which is the foundation of the word mesmerized. That was actually a person Mesmer. And I think let's talk about Mesmer. Why not? In for a penny, in for a pound. Bet you're all wishing Questing Beast did this video, right? Écryme is a 2d6 system that uses... Probably be done with it by now. Écryme is a 2d6 system that... No. All right, so we have Franz Anton Mesmer. And in the late 1800s, Mesmer comes up with this theory of animal magnetism. And essentially, he talked about this fluid that flowed through all living things, kind of an ether type substance, but that it was illness came from an imbalance of that or blockages. And if you know anything about this idea of like fluid balance goes back quite far in human history, right? And so even talking about like splenic, that has a lot to do with the 4 essential fluids. And there's actually the entirety of the relationship between these city-states are called the lattice, right? So the main disease is on the lattice, and Mesmer actually would say that between phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, and blood. Okay, so like black bile and phlegm would mean you're introverted. A high level of black bile would be melancholic. Yellow bile, blood, extroverted. Black bile, blood, stable. Phlegmatic, choleric, or yellow bile, unstable. Now, just remember this, that we look at this, and this was a pseudoscience. This was an occultist sort of situation, but these terms like extroversion, unstable, these are still used in psychiatry. Like somebody could be an unstable extrovert or an unstable high neuroticism, low conscientiousness introvert. So these terms were the foundation of things that still exist today. And so he would say, well, you need the right balance of these fluids to be healthy, not only in your body, but your personality. And you can manipulate, balance these fluids via magnetism. And he would have these spectacles, these like sessions where he'd have a big group of people in these like bathtub, swimming pool, baquettes, I think they were called. And he'd have them holding like iron rods. So if you were a person at this time and you saw one of these sessions, you'd be like, oh my God, this is crazy, because people would have like fits, crises, I don't know how to say it, but they would have, it would look like seizures, and they would spasm, and then they would claim, oh my gosh, this pain I've had forever is finally gone. And he would use, not only would he pass like iron rods, but magnets, or his hands, kind of like, I don't want to talk trash on Reiki, but it would kind of look like Reiki, right? Just like the manipulation of energy fields. And the look of them, again, if you can find a picture of these, the rooms were dim. There was this magnetized pool of water, these iron rods, and they would slowly move the hands over the body and manipulate the energy fields. People would start convulsing. They would go into these trance states, and they would say, oh, the blockage, it's clearing. People used to like gather around these huge tubs, these huge swimming pools of this magnetized water, and they would hold on to these rods, and Mesmer would be like, okay, I'm going to move some energy over here. So it was super popular for like 10 years. Now, here's where this gets really fun. So sometime 1784. Louis the 14th is like, all right, I don't know what's going on here, but I need some like mythbusters. And so he sends in 3 bros. This is such an amazing team. So he sends in 3 guys and he's like, look, this thing it's becoming way too popular. I'm worried about it. I need you to investigate this. So the first one is Lavoisier, who is like, you can check me on this if any of you are like chemical engineers, but as far as I understand, Antoine Lavoisier is like the father of modern chemistry. All right. Number 2 is this dude who is like, he he was very, very much invested in ethical death penalties. He thought that like the way that people were put to death he didn't want to stop them, but he just wanted them to be more humane. And he didn't invent it, but it because he advocated for it, his last name did stick to the actual device that he supported, which was the guillotine. Okay, and so it was Lavoisier, and actually I'm pretty sure that guillotine has no E at the end of his name. Doesn't matter. So you have Lavoisier, you have guillotine, and then the third person was this young diplomat from the U.S., the French diplomat, my boy, your boy, Ben Franklin. So these 3 come in, and they investigate this, and they come back to the king, and they're like, yeah, dude, 100% this is fake. Like, it's all suggestion. It's all this kind of, what they would describe it in what eventually would become hypnotism. Okay. And so it was in fact, I think that's how you spell his name. It might be Brade. James Braid, who's a Scottish physician, he eventually wrote this is neuroptherapy, something like that. Anyways, this was actually a book that is still the foundation for like hypnotherapy today, where this guy was like, there's no magic involved in this. There's no, energies, because there's vital philosophy is going on at this time. He's like, it's just suggestion. There's the power of suggestion in the unconscious mind. And he formed the foundations of hypnotherapy, which had some stuff in it, like some stuff we wouldn't see today anymore. But for the most part, he's like, it's not a mystical fluid, it's attention, it's suggestion. And we can use this to help people to, change their habits and stuff, because we're accessing their mind at a level that is not the surface conscious mind. Now, a young student gets very, very interested in this. I need to look up the name of the book because it's actually available on Internet Archive. It's pretty cool to read. I was close. It's actually called neuropnology. So, and I also missed a step. So, neuropnology, Braid writes this. And then there's a doctor at this famous French hospital that I'll never remember the name of and can never say it, even if it's in front of me. But his name is Jean-Martin Charcot. And Charcot starts using this hypnosis to study hysteria, right? Which is, if you don't know, hysteria has the root hyster, like hysterectomy. It's related to the uterus. So it was this state of panic and neuroses experienced by women, and it was obviously caused by their uterus. But a student of Charcot gets super interested in this, okay? And this was right around the time that Bernheim and School, it's a person named Nancy School, they start talking about suggestibility is this sort of universal pathway that we haven't looked at before. Because remember, until this time, there's no subconscious mind. If you were to go to somebody and say, oh yeah, you have all these motivations and everything that you're not like even accounting for. They'd be like, screw you. How dare you? I am in charge. Like, I am the captain of my ship. But it's also during this time that like Poe, Balzac, all of these all these authors are starting to incorporate these trance states, these mesmeric trance states, people mesmerized in their fiction. And Charcot's student is very interested in this, and that student is Freud. And so you can really like trace this through to Freud, who a lot of this stuff, right, is it's to the it it's still part of our lingua franca, if you will. Um, Even though we're not talking about animal magnetism and stuff like that, we're still talking about like balance. You know, we need to balance, and no, we're not saying that this person is phlegmatic, but we are, like, in some ways we are. Look at like personality disorders in the DSM. You know, this person has a dependent personality disorder. This person is narcissistic. Whatever it might be, they're saying this person has too many they have too many points in this stat, and we need to move it over here. Anyways, I point that out because all of these things show up in Écryme. Écryme. They show up in Écryme, which is mesmerism and vitalism. You have these invisible forces shaping bodies. Literally, animal magnetism is in the game. Cephaly. If you use the cephaly magic too much, it causes a backlash. You need at least 1 point in the skill of entelechy to have your character be able to draw into the cephalic field. You can heal players' HP corruption through suggestion, trance, hidden energies, and it is this precursor to psychology and psychoanalysis. But the premise that is in the game is the premise that was invented by Mesmer, is the premise of today, which is the mind has incredible power, but at a cost. Okay, and then we have again Baudelaire, the spleen and ideal. Right, the ideal is this yearning for beauty, meaning, transcendence. Spleen is this crushing melancholy, corruption, despair. The tension between those is the engine of personal drama. Okay. And then alchemy and telechy, the philosopher's stone of the psyche, and these other nodes, right? This sort of mirrors this elemental alchemical framework, and it all leaves residue of scoria. All of this is functioning on a higher level in Écryme. Why do I keep saying Écryme? Écryme. And you have these very real, very authentic conflicts that come up in this game. Class struggle, crime, corruption. The traverses are these contested spaces between wealth, law, and poverty. And I think it's just powerful, the amount of things that are dealt with in this book that can be dealt with at a table with people who are dealing with real things. You know, there is real persecution that happens in some of these city states. There is real problems. There is an emphasis on different cultural norms and values, and they are born from necessity of this dying world. This is not papered over in a utopia. It's real. It's there, and the players can deal with these things. Okay, and yeah, you have these different groups. You have like Konzerns, which are like the merchant noble cartels. You have the lodges, which are guilds, or sorry, they say like no. These are regular guilds that hoard knowledge. and techniques and different things like that, because that's a currency in a world that is mostly underwater. And then you have guilds, which are sort of outlaw underclasses, crime syndicates, raiders, and you have the traverses where these all sort of meet. There's the social collapse and decadence. There's modernity, and then the melancholy of progress passing us by. We have the flaneur figure, the observer looking at this fleeting modern life, and it's all going a million miles an hour. That was a Baudelaire thing. And so you have in the same place ruins, art, progress, machinery, rust, destruction, corrosion, beauty, despair. It's all woven together. And you're going to deal with things like persecution of people who are different, population control measures, women's roles is the amount of cultural influence that artists yield, the way that the aristocracy exploits the masses while still like maintaining these codes for order. And so everything in the game has a mark that it leaves on you. This game is not about just, I mean, there's combat, but like a set form of combat in the game is duels. You know, it's like meet me on the traverse, and there's set rules for how to duel. There's debates, and there is mechanics for how to do debates. If you lose the debate, you have social humiliation. And so there's wounds in the physical, social, and mental spheres, which I hope it's coming through right now. What I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, never have I seen such a rhyming between the world building and look at this damn fruit fly. I think it's the same one. No matter what I do, I've got one banana for one day. 1 second, please. I have to talk to this guy. Well, no, of course you're not seeing this rhyming because I haven't explained it yet. Okay. What I'm going to show you now as I move to the mechanics is how in alignment they are, because of the skills that are used in this game. The 3 domains are physical, mental, social. Okay, and then you have skills under those, and there is the reason why the player's guide is 3/4 lore and 1/4 rules is because, and I'm starting to see from what I've been reading about a couple of these things, is a very French approach to role playing, which is you need to immerse yourself first. The player needs to be as immersed as the GM, and then we'll talk to you about the system after that, because it assumes that you're going to bring dramatic intent into play rather than waiting for a GM to hand you missions. This isn't about dungeon crawling. There's another game that the only other game I know of in this tradition would be like Nephilim. And these are games, both this and Nephilim are games that are obsessed with existential positioning rather than like quest lines. Okay? And so what do you do in the game? Exploration and survival, crime. The traverses are dangerous. Expeditions across them generate duels, chases, hazards, secrets. Then there's political and social drama. Each city is going to have factions, nobles, outcasts, courtesans, artists, monk. There's a whole religious aspect I haven't even gotten into. And then personal tragedy and philosophy. Can we do that? I mean, can we make a game that doesn't necessarily is not made for every single person to play, but sometimes it feels like for those who want to explore the more to explore like the internal tensions between what we wanted the world to be and what it is, between who we want people to think we are versus who they think we are, versus who we tell people we are, and also to allow ourselves to realize, as with all good fiction like this, especially disaster fiction, two things. Wow, this is such an amazing, weird, scary, far out science fiction world. And also, I guess we're in the same place. We are on islands separated by nothing but danger and shit, wall to wall. Out of desperation, we do what we can. We are so far from each other that we default to suspicion and paranoia and hatred. We find reasons to be unhappy. We find reasons to duel. And things that are sometimes within and sometimes outside of our control determine our ability to succeed at just about everything. And at the end of the day, the people who have their boots on the back of our necks are very happy to see us fighting with each other. Because the more that we fight with each other, the more we will ignore that the pain and the suffocating feeling of being trapped is not being caused by the boot. That's what this game is about. And I think that I don't know if everybody would be able to get on board with this game, because it will take more work than the usual sort of, I think 99% of TTRPG play, 99% is way too high. A big percentage is like these one-shot games at a game store, and those are great, and especially for kids and stuff like that, I think they're fantastic. But it's hard, a game like this or a game like Pendragon even, it's tough. It's tough because there's not a lot of time, and I want to get to the good part. But I just feel like this is a game that is spiritually a solo role player's game, even if there's not a solo mode. I don't know if there could even be a solo mode of this game. I mean, I feel like a solo mode of it might be just reading it. Falling into the Écryme. Yeah, I love these stilt walkers that are like putting on their Sunday's best. For those of you who like love exploring tons of lore and reading about different factions and stuff, it is just so cool. I'm so happy that I like got exposure to this this world, because it's so cool. And the art, it's especially cool too that we're sort of, I mean, unless you are a francophone, coming into this now when it's very developed, Okay, so the system. So you can do character creation. It's going to be your spleen and ideal, right? Your ideal is your aspiration, your guiding vision, your personal justice, artistry, love, dignity. It's not meant to be world saving. It is something specific and personal. And then you have this spleen, which is your character's sort of emotional wound, their disillusionment, their chronic melancholy. I feel melancholy. It's the counterweight to the ideal. It represents the fact that ideals are hard to live by, and especially in a very compromised, decaying world. Also, like, two people can have the same things, but for one person, their spleen is the other person's ideal, and vice versa. It's the game's about dramatic tension. You're not just a guy with a sword. You're a guy whose sword fights are haunted by his failure to educate the masses. All right, so character creation, you're going to have traits. You get a total value of +2 across these traits. There can be 2 traits at +1, 1 trait at +2. You can also take a negative in a trait and add an extra +1 to another. But essentially, positives plus negatives, your traits are going to equal out to +2. You know what? Let me go to the page. Okay, I just want to add something that I should have said earlier. I'm not used to saying this because I usually do just solo play, but um, if you are a like someone who wants to play this in a group, like propose it to your group, you should not get the conductor's manual. I can promise you, uh, right off the bat in this manual, it's going to tell you some secrets about the world that are so cool. And I promise you, they are so cool and so interesting, and they add so many cool layers to things. Um, so I will promise you that, but I won't say what they are because um, this is a game that definitely is to be played on different levels. And if it's your first time playing, especially, you're going to start on a uh, like more surface level. And so you should get the player's guide um, because I think that I think the secrets that are unveiled are significant enough that it would affect the choices you make, and when your choices are affected prematurely, I feel that it affects my enjoyment if I'm not playing solo play. If I play solo play, then the reveal of the secret is not the sweet spot. So just a little bit of a warning, but it's also interesting because some of the things that we assume about role playing are treated slightly differently that are worth noting. For instance, um, the conductor. Remember, I talked about the flaneur, this character of Baudelaire, which is just the chap walking around Paris, noticing things, being very curious, being very perceptive. The conductor almost takes on that role, and they do like have to decide their narrator's conductor's worldview, almost like an own version of their character, because their involvement in play is different, and the onus is on the players to assist the conductor with play, which it really should be that way in all games, but uh, so it some of the stuff you have to adjust your mind. I'll briefly at the end talk about how the cephaly magic system works, and it is I can tell you that like I don't fully understand it. I think it's really really cool, but if I was even a little less experienced, I'm not saying I totally get it, but I'm saying if I was a year or two less experienced, I don't think I'd get it at all. So don't be discouraged if you don't get that right away. I think this is a game that takes a little while to digest and metabolize, but it is all very cool and it's all very novel, like the way that these things work. Okay. So yeah, the total value of your traits is going to be +2, and your traits. This is another thing that's a little bit weird. Your traits are like not necessarily set. You have to decide on things that are. Here I go, showing the rules of cephaly. Um, they are things that you have to name that really um, like capture the essential pieces of who your character is. You'll be able to do this better with the character creation steps because there is a very, very thorough character creation step. Sorry, guide here. And then there's even like an advanced or more elaborate character creation questions that you could ask. So this is a character you're very, very much going to get to know. Okay. And then so you decide those traits, you decide your spleen and ideal, you rank those traits because the traits will um, provide a +1 or a -1 for your 2d6 like checks. Okay. I'll just say up front and I'll revisit it that to do like a skill check, it's going to be skill plus 2d6 plus trait plus specialization greater than difficulty. And then there's like to see how much you succeeded, you determine the margin, which is margin is skill plus 2d6 plus trait plus specialization minus difficulty. All you have to, an easier way for me to understand this is just how much did you beat the difficulty by, right? If your margin is greater than 0, it's a success. If it's equal, it's status quo. If it's less, then it's a failure. And this is all very interesting because this is very much similar to the Outer Darkness, which is my game that has 2 more days of being only $5. And if this is if you're watching this on the first day it came out, it is the deal of the day today on Drive Thru RPG. No, wait, no, it is not. Hold on a second. Okay, Outer Darkness is going to be it's $12, but it's going to be $5 for the rest of September. So like 3 more days until the final version's uploaded. Also, my other solo resource, Vox Profunda, it's going to be the deal of the day today, which means it will regular price $9.99. It's going to be $5. So they told me to share that, so here I am sharing it at the best point, about an hour into a video. All right, so we determine those traits, and then we have skills. Skills are going to be divided into these 3 categories: physical, mental, social, and they're fun. Physical, athletics, driving, fencing, brawling, shooting, and specialization in a type of weapon. Mental is the usual anthropomechanology, echrymology, traumatology, traversology, urbanotechnology, which actually all kind of makes sense, right? Anthropomechanology, like the study of mechanical objects. Echrymology, the study of the Écryme. Traumatology is probably going to be medical. Yep. Traversology is getting across, as well as construction, map making. And then urbanotechnology is the equivalent of traversology for cities. I love the names of the social skills: quibbling, oral conflict, creativity, loquacity. Like loquaciousness is a more subtle approach to than quibbling, sort of being convincing. Guile, performance, and you get to specialize in each of these. Like you can specialize, if you, I think you can level these up to 5, and then, or at least when you start a character, they can't have more than 5. You get 30 points to divide total. If you want to add a specialization in, say, quibbling, you could choose an area of quibbling, like rhetoric, giving commands, interrogation. For shooting, you can say you have a 5 in shooting and a specialization in knife throwing. To get a specialization, you have to spend 1 additional skill point upgrade it to have a specialization, which gives you additional points to your 2d6 roll. All right. Then you have impacts, which are sort of your scars, and these can be superficial, light, serious, or major. And then this is a list right here of a bunch of different stuff you can do in the game. By no means is this something you have to memorize. It's just giving you a list of things that, you will commonly see, and then it will tell you which skill you would use for that. So, for instance, if you're like, I want to decipher a message, urbanotechnology. I want to wear a disguise, performance. I want to run, athletics. I want to start a rumor, loquacity. All right. So we have our traits, we have our skills, we decided our spleen or an ideal. We decide if we want to be a character with cephaly. And that's a little bit weird. I will say this is this took me a minute. There is a big emphasis on the mechanics of characters who have cephaly. That whole wheel I showed you, that's for if your character has cephaly, which is you're plugged into the magic system. And again, if you are going to be a player, Plug your ears until I flip this over. Okay. Go plug your ears. I'll flip it over to 2. Okay. So basically, this is very much like Warhammer 40k, where your magic system is derived from the warp in that the Écryme, is like the warp. Those who are tuned into the cephaly draw that power from the Écryme. And that is like, there's a lot more to it than just being like an ocean of sludge. Okay. All right, welcome back. Now I will talk about cephaly. Is gonna blow your mind a bit, but let's just review one more time what we're gonna do to figure out the resolution system. Simple 2d6 roll. Most of the time, it's just gonna be 2d6 plus your skill. If your skill is you have a specialization in that, you get an extra +1 if you're doing specifically that, right? If you have a 5 in performance and your performance, you're using it on disguises and you have a specialization in that, you add an additional +1. If your trait applies, you add +1 or +2 for that, or -1, -2. And then occasionally you'll have something else that can be kind of added to that, but you'll then compare that to the difficulty score. So most of the time it's 2d6 plus trait plus skill versus target number. The margin matters. Higher margin is greater effect. Failure margin's higher setback, especially in combat where you like have different stuff that happens if you get a +4 versus a +1 margin. All right. You could also have a situational modifier. This is the Outer Darkness system to a T. I love that this system is like, I love that my system that I pretty much cobbled together is like a usable system by a book that has gold leaf on the front of it. So yeah, there's like different types of conflict. There's duels, there's chases, there's impacts. Impact damage can come from, duels and chases. I was going to say if you have like a verbal conflict. But they, again, could either be superficial, light, serious, or major, and then there could be these like lingering scars. This is detailed character creation. We'll ask you like some more deep questionnaires, especially within forming your group. Okay. If I was a GM, here's how I would do it. I would frame a scene. I would spotlight with that scene at least one player character's spleen or ideal, and even better to have the conflict between those or a conflict between one person's spleen and another's ideal. Then players are going to declare their intent, make sure they're in character in this game. This is all about dramatis personae. Then if they want to do something, we do a dice resolution. We narrate the results. We apply the fallout if there's impact, scars, or for cephaly, the cephalic backlash. And then there's rules for downtime, reflection, healing, faction ties. It's going to be mostly that. So if that's not your thing, this game's just not for you. Different strokes for different folks, you know? But I love the open-endedness of this. And if you like, you can look at this and say, gosh, what am I supposed to do? But I believe that if you actually read most of the stuff, or even a lot of the stuff, half of the stuff going up to this, you're going to be bursting at the seams thinking about stuff you want to do because your character they exist. What do I do? What do you mean, what do I do? You are a stilt walker and you live in Venice and your child is sick and you need to make enough money and you need to do it by summer, etc. All right, so you even go through like your adolescence, which is I love character creation systems. Here is a couple of the archetypes. The aeronaut. I love that there are airships. The wandering mapmaker, the raconteur, the archivist, the degreaser. Hell yeah. The courtesan, the Icarian, the stilt walker, the merchant noble, ooh la la, metropolite, The Snoop. Snoop. Acrobat worker. Renegade scientist. I'm not using sterile technique. The Malacan pontiff. Felix de Vandenesse, the youngest child from an aristocratic family, could not take being rejected by the Countess de Mortsauf, the virtuous wife of a merchant noble. Rather than face his failure, he ran away and took refuge amongst men exploited by his own peers. He found the outlet for chaste love, which was what he was looking for in the pious vows of the Alicans. He now wanders the traverses anonymously, a gifted holy man with great preaching abilities. +2, he doesn't miss anything about his past life, which he now considers frivolous. He is passionate about machines, that is his ideal, but does not like deviant scientific beliefs. He is spleen and seeks to prove that they are fraudulent. Physical, athletics 2, driving 2, fencing 0, brawling 2, shooting 3. Man, that looks awesome. The Écryme diver. The Stitch Lord. Yeah, I like that there's like pieces of this that are feudalist. There's pieces of it that are like roaring 20s. Difficulties, like sample difficulties, modifiers, teamwork can be a modifier. Opposed margins. Yeah. This is very interesting. Reason and emotion. This is very much like Pendragon to me. No time to go into it. Buy the game. Some example turns. Okay, the last thing I'll talk about is just about cephaly. And verbal altercations, torture. Torture and interrogation. And then all the impacts for physical, emotional. There's definite, like, mental health effects play as much as physical health. All right. So here's what I'll say about cephaly. Like I said, it's very... It was weird to me because it seems so central to the game that what I had to figure out was like, yes, it's central, and also you don't even have to do it. Like, if you don't want to do it, your character does not have to be plugged into it. In fact, in groups, it would be weird for more than one, I think. But when you plug into the cephalic field, you have so many different things going on. Like, even your advancement is changed. This is the spell system as far as I can imagine it. It's kind of... It's insane, but it's kind of cool. Okay. Basically, this I might have this wrong. Okay. I'm trying my best here to figure this out. I actually spent about an hour trying to figure this out. All right. When you have a cephalic connection, you have to have something that is your anancy. ANNENCY. And as far as I can tell, your anancy is some sort of totem that has to have metal in it, and it is connected to your cephalic powers. Okay? Now, when I say totem, you'll think of a chess piece. No, the ones they recommend are medium size. So they even say, like, make your airship a cephaly or an anancy, but don't make a whole city. That would be too hard. And so if your other characters are in contact with this anancy, the reason why it's like do an airship is because they'll all be connected to it. Even if they don't have the ability, they can sort of use the anancy as a conduit. To have cephalic powers are basically in the categories of like entelechy, mechany, psyche, etc. And each of those has a different type of effect. Whatever you want to do, you look up like which of the cephaly powers it is, elegy, entelechy, mechany, psyche, or scoria. And they do different things, okay? So far, kind of weird, but not, we haven't gotten it yet. All right. So if you are somebody who is cephalic, you have to create an oniric form or a bohem. It is the imaginary form of your anancy. It does mean it means bohemian, but the way that it's used here, again, as far as I could tell, this is a quite a strange French usage of it. But it means you are creating this dream world where an alternate version of yourself, your bohem, contains this place and time outside of the lattice. And so when you cast a spell, so say I cast a spell, which they're not a spell, but just say I do that. Yeah. What is actually happening? All right. Say that I go, ooh, and this card goes. It's like, whoa, you just zapped that card. What actually happened is that my oniric form in the bohem like went and picked up this card and threw it. See what I'm saying? And so in that way, it uses that parallel reality to explain the effects of a spell. That's why, so like an elegy can manipulate, senses. And so if you're like, oh, I want to look through that wall, from the outside in, it would look like you have a spell called X-ray vision, but what's actually happening is your elegy aspect of your bohem is going around that wall and looking over there and then coming back and telling you. Or you're seeing through their eyes. You understand that? And as it gets more powerful, your oniric form can do more. Your oniric form can light a building on fire. Your oniric form can crush somebody into the ground. From our perspective, it just looks like magic, but you're in a trance while it's happening. I believe that is the system. I don't know how well it works, but it's damn interesting because it has this whole system for determining like how difficult it is to do the spell. It's like, okay, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to replicate minor senses? Do you want to, what sort of action? Do you want to control something? Do you want to modify something? Do you want to destroy something? Do you want to perceive something? And you kind of zero in on like, okay, so now how long do you want it to last? Oh, I want it to last only a few seconds. Okay, you get a +2. I want it to actually last longer, 5 minutes. Okay, then your skill roll has to have a -2 then, because that's harder. Yeah, I want it to last a day, and I want it to like alter the fabric of reality. So that's like, that's going to be extremely difficult, right? Because your difficulty score you have to beat is already a 12, and then your like modifier includes a -4. So you better have a lot of skills to get something that's going to beat a 12 with a -4 to start. And then margin of success, like after you do the roll, you have like 1 or 2 margins. Well, then whatever it was, it'll last one scene. It will be a superficial impact. I mean, not all these things, but it could be any of them. Were you trying to cause a symptom? Well, then it's a non-serious invisible symptom. If you tried to make somebody's nose explode and you didn't really do it well, they feel an itch on their nose because your bohem didn't like. So I think anything more I say will just confuse it more. But for those that get it, isn't that kind of cool? And then there's this whole thing with shards of reality. Placing a shard into a bohem. It's a very like malleable magic system that does have a logic to it. I think it's kind of cool. And then you look at this and you're like, that's what's like working behind the scenes. Anyways, that is Écryme. I think it would be, well, let me actually be honest. I had fun solo playing it, and all I did was read it because I imagined so much. I tried out the systems. I think as much as I would love to do a playthrough for you all, I don't think it's kind of playthrough I could do on camera, but maybe not. Maybe in fact, I think it would require some more learning, and I think we could figure out a way. There's definitely a way. I shouldn't have said that. It's just that I think it's got a lot of interesting things that come out of it from group play, and so converting those kind of things would be interesting. It sounds like if you're somebody who is like, wow, I'm not into it, fine. But if you're the person who's like, this whole thing sounds awesome, give us a solo supplement. And then also, if you work for Open Sesame Games, everything I just said, I was kidding, and I would love to help make this solo supplement. In fact, I have millions of. I've got to go. Thank you, everybody. How long was that video? 10 minutes? Oh my god! I can't tell time. I'm in the zone. Just kidding. This was like the third time I recorded the video. Can you believe that? It's a lie. I did start it once and then stop for like 10 seconds. Is there someone named Mike Cranberry? I gotta update this. Why does one of you have a square root?